Obsidian has made some incredible games, with one of the most popular being Fallout New Vegas. However, The Outer Worlds has been another great series that I have found hard to put down. The crazy world and gameplay feels like an evolution of what they could have done with Fallout, and I love the sci-fi aesthetic the entire game exuded. Now The Outer Worlds 2 is almost here, and I have found it even more compelling to dive in. I've been loving it so far, and even though my biggest criticism so far is the menus, especially the main menu, which is very obnoxious and cumbersome, I have had a blast with the actual gameplay elements and feel it does expand on the Outer Worlds while bringing in some really nice enhancements and tweaks to make it feel more engaging. However, in this video, I want to talk more about how it's been on the Steam Deck. I wanted to still put out a video showing my experience so far on the deck, and even though I haven't finished the game just yet, I am fairly confident that most of the game will play out this way. If you want to see more videos like this, hit that like and subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as our next video goes live. The Outer Worlds 2 was provided by Xbox Game Studios for review. Thank you. Going into The Outer Worlds 2 on the Steam Deck, I wasn't actually hoping for much. Unlike Xbox's other newly released game, Ninja Gaiden 4, which runs really well on the Steam Deck, you can check out our video on it in the link in the description, The Outer Worlds 2 didn't get the Valve-appointed badge. The system requirements are also a little too high for deck gameplay, with the GPU requirement, the GTX 1070, specifically being a little too much. Still, I wanted to try it out and see how playable it could be for myself, and ultimately, I would consider it just barely playable, with some caveats. For the most part, the game will be able to stick to 30 frames per second with default settings and TSR upscaling at balanced. With these settings, there is some blurriness on the screen, especially when moving around, but ultimately, it's still very easy to see what is going on and who we're talking to. The only super blurry aspect that stands out was moving the text on a computer screen in-game when you're hacking, but it would straighten out as soon as the text stopped moving. While fights and walking around generally stuck to 30 frames per second, there were consistent drops of 28 that weren't felt much. However, moving in and out of towns and buildings, as well as running across the world for longer stretches of time, can cause some drops and stutters, going down to 18 frames per second at times. This was unavoidable and would happen no matter how low the settings were, and which upscaler was used. Still, it held strong for most of the fights I was in, and that really helped. I also tested out all the upscalers to see which was the best. While FSR was the best for performance, I found TSR to be the best visually, and it still has pretty good performance. The differences in the performance between FSR and TSR are minimal, while the visuals can be striking. Specifically, taking a look at the foliage in the open world shows a huge difference. The foliage glistens with FSR, and TSR doesn't at all, having a good blend of the edges to make it look better overall. XeSS looks even worse than FSR and performs worse, so it wasn't an option I would recommend. The game will also need all the power it can get to play on the Steam Deck, so there won't be much leeway for other options or battery saving. I also recommend not using FSR since it will use the resources we need for the game, while lossless scaling and frame generation will not be consistent or feel smooth because of the base frame rate fluctuations. However, I did play around a little bit more with lossless scaling to see how it would feel, and for the most part, it's okay. It does feel smoother when you're running around and sometimes in combat, but as soon as you get into some major cities with frame rate fluctuations, it can become really slow and it does not feel good at all. Sometimes it takes a while for it to get back to that smoothness, and sometimes it just doesn't at all. So I still recommend not using it, but if you are going to use it, I would say it is playable. Only use 2x because anything more than that will add too much input lag. While it will take some compromise, The Outer Worlds 2 is technically playable on the Steam Deck. It will get to 30 frames per second a lot of the time and mostly stick there in fights, though there will be some drops here and there when running around a lot or going in and out of buildings and towns. It's not often, but it happens enough to consider it consistent. I also recommend using TSR for the best looking visuals, since FSR and XeSS have some bigger issues with blurriness and foliage. Still, even without the rating, I would consider it just playable, and if you have no other way to play it, the deck will suffice. If you want the best experience for it though, I would either get it for a more powerful device, or use Xbox Cloud Gaming to stream it to your deck. If you already are subscribing to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, you won't need to do much more and you can just take advantage of that. The new game will also be streamable on GeForce Now, so if you purchase it through Steam, you should be able to take advantage of that. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like and subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as our next video goes live. And a huge thank you to our patrons. You guys are awesome. See you next time.